The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult, if not impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Thursday, January the 29th, 2026. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost. And opening with the front page, nice city, chilly to federal officials. Angry Minneapolis fights unwanted guests. Trevor Hughes is the sole correspondent on this article. Hands trembling in the sub-zero cold, Tasha Crazy Bull flicked her lighter again and again and again until the bundle of dried sage caught flame. As the dried plants wafted fragrant smoke into the frigid air, Crazy Bull cupped her hands and drew them over her head in a ritual long used for purification and positive energy. Around her clustered dozens of other mourners, who also came to Nicollet Avenue to pay respects at the site where the federal immigration agents on January 24th shot and killed Alex Preddy. Preddy, an ICU nurse with the Department of Veterans Affairs, was attending a protest against immigration enforcement, and his death has sparked fresh nationwide debate about how the Trump administration is carrying out plans for the largest mass deportation in history. In a community known as Minnesota Nice, the violence that has erupted on the city streets has triggered anger, grief, feelings of helplessness. Residents have been tailing immigration agents, honking horns, blowing whistles, and even at times physically intervening to try to prevent agents from detaining people suspected of living illegally in the United States. An estimated 50,000 locals marched in the streets on January 23rd, staying home from work and school to participate in a general strike. And angry protesters on the night of January 25th vandalized, tried to break into a hotel where they believed immigration agents were staying. Everyone is just hurting right now, said Crazy Bull, who lives a few miles away from where Preddy was killed. Preddy was carrying a licensed concealed firearm, and federal officials have blamed him for being shot, although videos indicate he never drew the weapon. Earlier this month, immigration agents also shot and killed a Minneapolis mother, Renee Good, behind the wheel of her car. Both Good and Preddy were American citizens. Both cases, video of their deaths appeared to show they were the victims, not the aggressors, in the abrupt confrontations with immigration enforcers. In the days before the shootings, White House officials deployed approximately 3,000 federal immigration enforcers from Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the U.S. Border Patrol to Minneapolis as part of Operation Metro Surge. While Chicago, Charlotte, North Carolina, and New Orleans have been the focus of similar enforcement efforts over the past several months, Minneapolis has seen a far larger deployment and more sustained attention. That has been driven, in part, by the president's assertions that Somali immigrants have been defrauding the government of billions of dollars. The majority of Minneapolis's Somali population was either born in the U.S. or has become citizens, although President Donald Trump has threatened to denaturalize those directly involved in the fraud. Minnesota, it's also home to Governor Tim Walz. He's a Democrat who was the vice presidential nominee during the 2024 presidential election. The two have clashed repeatedly, but on January 26th, said they had a productive phone call in which they agreed to increased cooperation. The president agreed to help ensure an independent investigation into the shootings, as would ordinarily be the case according to a statement released by Walz's office. The president also agreed to look into reducing the number of federal agents in Minnesota and working with the state in a more coordinated fashion on immigration enforcement regarding violent criminals. On Nicollet Avenue, near where Preddy died, new mom Leah Thompson, age 31, held a sign on January 25th demanding federal immigration enforcers leave the city. Nearby, another woman held a sign referring to the state's unofficial motto, Minnesota Nice, combined with a profane abbreviation telling ICE agents to depart. Thompson said it's telling that in a state where people are known for being nice, tens of thousands have taken to the streets in protest. They are living up to their nice reputation in other ways. Crazy Bill said families at her children's school are helping each other with errands and pickups if they don't feel comfortable leaving home. Across the city, restaurants have put up flyers banning ICE from entering without a judicial warrant. And dozens more residents have stood atop overpasses, waving signs demanding that federal authorities withdraw. Protesters also directed their anger at Trump, arguing his administration is wrongly sweeping up otherwise law-abiding immigrants instead of focusing on convicted criminals as he had promised. Like several other people upset by Preddy's video-recorded death in broad daylight, Thompson wondered aloud about what happens in the shadows. We are angry, we are scared, and we are very sad about what happened, Thompson said. It's absolutely terrifying to think about what's happening and what comes next. The deaths of Preddy and Good have hit extra hard for those still mourning the death of George Floyd, who was murdered by Minneapolis police in May of 2020 in a nearby part of the city. Floyd's death sparked massive protests and civil unrest, both locally and nationally, and prompted many communities across the country to reform local policing. Trump's deployment of thousands of immigration enforcers to Minneapolis has reopened still healing wounds for some residents. Tamika Garcia, 48, she works near where Preddy was killed. She said she wishes people would offer more empathy and less judgment for their fellow humans. Garcia, who works at a nonprofit that aids immigrants, said people are scared, but they remain optimistic. She characterized Preddy's death as a potentially catalyzing moment in history. I think we feel defeated, but hopeful, she said. It's been a setback, but it's also been fuel that's brought us together, and we really do that well here. We know that we're stronger together. In the parking lot adjacent to the Home 2 Suites Hotel, where protesters had tried to force their way into the lobby the night before, Jerry McCurley and her husband loaded up their minivan for a 3-hour drive back to Wisconsin. The retired couple arrived in town January 23rd for a cat show competition and were awakened overnight by protesters outside. They own 4 cats, including several Scottish folds, the kind Taylor Swift has, McCurley said. The Home 2 Suites next to their Hampton Inn was covered in red and black spray-painted epithets and demand that ICE leaves. The doors were locked to non-guests, and at least one uniformed security officer was visible in the lobby the morning of January 26th. Now, protesting is fine. The violence I don't like, McCurley said, as she supervised her husband, her breath steaming in the -5-degree morning, when it sounded like they were down here playing drums. I wondered if they were out there beating on cars. The couple said they had some mild concern about coming to the city during the ongoing Operation Metro Surge and said they decided to stay in bed instead of coming outside to see the protest. McCurley said 3 of their 4 Havana Brown and Scottish Fold cats placed in the show. Excuse me. And they were relieved to be leaving Minneapolis following the January 24th shooting. Illegals should be removed, but ICE should not be going into churches and schools, McCurley said, and ICE is making it worse. They need better training. They think of protesters as insurgents. They come at them with that attitude.
Parents too involved in raising your kids? What you can do about helicopter grandparents. From Madeline Mitchell of USA Today. The helicopter parents of the 1990s and early 2000s are now becoming grandparents, but for some, they've kept their helicopter moniker. Mom, those are my kids. You're grandma now, remember? That's what actor and TikTok momfluencer Sela Victor said to her mother in a recent social media video with more than 25,000 views. While she said it jokingly in the video, she touched on a tension brewing in households across the country. Helicopter grandparenting. Emily Greenberg, president and co-founder of the parenting coach platform Joy Parenting Club, says she has a couple of helicopter grandparents herself, and they live just around the block. Having support is amazing, but control is exhausting, she said, noting other parents without any family help might scoff at her annoyance. I know I'm very lucky. Helicopter grandparents are over-involved in their grandchildren's upbringing, beyond the requested boundaries of the parents, Greenberg said. Some of that over-involvement is likely coming from a place of insecurity and anxiety, she said, as grandparents try to figure out their new role. The idea that an older adult is running out of time to parent or to be useful to their adult child is scary, Greenberg said. But by overcompensating, they often cross boundaries, leading parents to instinctively pull away, often the opposite response of what a grandparent wants. What's a grandparent's role? Kurt Ella, a psychologist and associate professor of clinical psychiatry at Georgetown University School of Medicine, works with families through all life stages. There are basically three different grandparenting styles, Ella said: remote, companionate, and involved. Companionate grandparents are fun seekers, but they don't help in raising their grandkids. Excuse me. He agrees that aging anxiety could result in a type of involved grandparent who could be described as a helicopter grandparent. But that anxiety could also go the other way, he said, and make grandparents isolate more for fear of doing something wrong. Excuse me. Closeness between grandparents and their grandchildren is a good thing, Ella said. It can take some of the stress of parenting off parents. It also gives grandparents a new sense of purpose, reduces feelings of loneliness, and makes them stay sharp during activities and outings. I really think it actually helps all three generations, Ella says. Greenberg has seen the positive impact grandparenting has had on her father, especially who enjoys playing catch with her 7-year-old son outside. Her dad has come alive as a grandfather, she said. Having a grandson has really given him a renewed sense of urgency, creativity, and warmth. I can see in him this sort of spark to try new things. The problem comes when grandparents forget that there's a whole parent world that they need to respect, said Dale Atkins, a psychologist and author of the children's book, The Turquoise Butterfly, which tells the story of a grandmother and her granddaughter. You have to be very conscious and careful about what you say, what you do, how you share your observations, and also what you say to your grandchildren, Atkins said, because they're not your children. A grandparent's job is to be curious, not critical, and always ask first before jumping in, according to Atkins. It's important for grandparents to remember their role as a current parent, too. New parents especially rely on their parents to be able to talk about their feelings as a new mom or dad, how things are going at work, and other details of their lives outside of the grandchildren. So much of parenting is about reflection, Greenberg said. Typically, older adults have had a lot of time to reflect on their own parenting choices by the time they become grandparents. Greenberg thinks some grandparent overstepping is about them wanting a redo. But grandparenting isn't about getting a second chance at parenthood, Atkins said. Grandparents should ask themselves what they want out of their grandparenting experience and set appropriate expectations. How should parents approach helicopter grandparents? Parents can say, I'm not looking for feedback on this, to unsolicited advice. Greenberg said. When approaching bigger conversations about setting boundaries, Greenberg suggests starting by validating grandparents' feelings of anxiety and thanking them for their help. Greenberg offers the HELP acronym as a guide. First, helpful or hangout.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15.
Continuing, help or hangout. Sometimes grandparents will seek quality time with their grandkids under the guise of being helpful. According to Greenberg, it's important to be clear and truthful about the intent of a get-together. Greenberg will often say to her mother, "Mom, are you trying to help me here, or are you just looking for grandma time?" "Grandma time is good," she said, "as long as that intention is transparent." Next, emotional need. Grandparents might be going through some anxiety about their new role and how they fit into their family. Being open about those anxieties, internal questions like, "Do I still matter here? Do I still belong?" Can help untangle miscommunication. Loaded meaning. Unsolicited parenting advice from grandparents is a common tension for families. Sometimes that advice can come off as judgmental, Greenberg said, when really grandparents might be questioning their own parenting choices from years ago. Parents might feel like their own parents don't trust them to make good choices. Greenberg said this also. And finally, parameters. Parents need to set clear boundaries and define what actions are helpful, according to Greenberg, but boundaries are not rejection. Avoiding the tension can only make things worse, according to Ella. He suggests regular check-ins. If it's not talked about, there's a lot of guesswork. There's a lot of misunderstandings. Sometimes they're stepping on each other's toes or even parenting in different ways, so it's almost like they're undoing each other.
Deep divisions remain over aid in dying. More states are allowing patients to decide, but opponents fear a slippery slope. Eduardo Cuevas of USA Today writes, "When Susan Rahn dies, she wants a party." The 55-year-old grandmother from Webster, New York, has stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. Ron considers herself lucky for having lived far beyond her expected lifespan at the time of her diagnosis over 10 years ago, thanks to advances in medicine. Now that allowed her to watch her son, who's now 27, graduate high school, college, start his own family. Ron regularly babysits her 2 granddaughters. In May, they went to Disney World for Ron's birthday. Her cancer has spread to her bones and lungs. Although she doesn't know when she'll die, she knows the cancer will be suffocating. When death is close, she'd like to leave everyone with happy memories. "We have a lot of choices when it comes to life," Ron said in an interview. "When it comes to navigating what our death looks like, there's really not very many choices. And a lot of time, the choice has been made for us." Now, this is why she hopes to use a forthcoming state law allowing terminally ill people to voluntarily end their life. New York is set to become the latest state to pass its Medical Aid in Dying Act when Governor Kathy Hochul is expected to sign it into law in the coming days. When it takes effect 6 months after Hochul signs the legislation, patients who have less than 6 months to live will be able to legally obtain a lethal prescription and administer it themselves. Because of additional restrictions under New York's law, including the delay on its implementation, Ron worries the legislation she fought years for, sharing her stories and appeals to lawmakers, might not be available to her if her cancer spreads far too quickly. New York would be the 13th state to have an aid in dying law. The first such law was enacted by Oregon in 1994. Except for Montana, the states are all Democratic leaning. All state laws have protections meant to ensure patients are not forced into dying. New York's legislation, which requires mandatory waiting periods, added mental health evaluations and limits to prevent family or others from receiving financial benefits from a person's death. It's more strict than most. Proponents said it's an option for terminally ill patients to have the right to die on their terms when pain can no longer be managed at the end of life. They know they're dying. They just want that security, said Amy Paulin, the New York Democratic State Assemblywoman who fought for the legislation for more than a decade. It's very important for our loved ones and our families to have that security blanket. Now, opponents hope to see the laws, which they call assisted suicide, ended. Opposition stems from a range of views around ending life, including medical, ethical guidelines, firm religious doctrine, and concerns around disability rights. They say the laws create a slippery slope that can expand to vulnerable groups who might be pressured to obtain lethal prescriptions. Legal and medical experts said the United States have said the United States has more restrictive state laws than other countries, confined only to those who are gravely ill and make their own decisions. In Belgium, for example, the European country's most expansive law for euthanasia, in which the physician administers the lethal drug, allows deaths for psychiatric illnesses and terminally ill minors. It's discrimination against people with disabilities, said Denise McMullen Powell, who's 80, a disability rights activist in Delaware, where the state's end-of-life options took effect January 1. McMullen Powell, who had polio as a child, uses a wheelchair, is involved with Not Dead Yet Delaware, which is challenging the state's law. The guardrails, they keep saying they're protective, McMullen Powell said, but mostly they're protective of the people providing the drugs and making the determination that you're terminal. Often people with disabilities are considered terminal, even when they're not. McMullen Powell said she has seen her husband, who experienced a severe stroke, always come home from hospital visits. Her parents died in hospice at home. Her father had prostate cancer but lived several years longer than expected. McMullen Powell sees a need to make better health care and pain management available instead of aid in dying laws, which she fears can be used to pressure people with disabilities to just end their lives. As a self-described liberal, she does not view the issue as political or religious. But much of the opposition is from the Catholic Church and Trump-aligned conservatives. Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's plan for the second Trump administration, aims to curtail laws around the country through federal oversight and action, particularly by using legal protections for people with disabilities. The conservative think tank has proposed improvements to palliative care by the Department of Health and Human Services. HHS has the authority to take the actions against these states with their quality of life regulations protecting persons with disabilities, said Roger Severino, director of the agent's Civil Rights Office in Trump's first term. Severino is now vice president for economic and domestic policy at the Heritage Foundation. They should act because everybody has inherent dignity, and a person's disability does not change that. Since Oregon voters narrowly passed their law in '94, a growing number of states and the District of Columbia have followed suit with similar legislation. About a dozen states, from Arizona to Massachusetts, have pending legislation to legalize medical aid in dying, according to Death with Dignity, an advocacy organization that supports and tracks laws around the country. Most states allow only residents to obtain aid in dying. Others allow people to travel to their state to obtain a lethal prescription. But the laws follow three basic principles, according to Dr. David Orentlicher, director of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. They depend on a patient being terminally ill with a life expectancy of no more than 6 months. Additionally, the person must be mentally competent to make his or her own decision. And lastly, the patient must administer the drug themselves. This means some people dying with debilitating physical diseases may have difficulty administering their own lethal medication, according to the law. Now, every state allows a patient to refuse life-saving treatment. Aid in dying laws extend that logic to terminally ill patients to end intolerable, grave suffering, according to Orrin Licker, who is also a Democratic state lawmaker in Nevada. You can choose quality of life over length of life, he said. Determinations of who qualifies are made by medical providers. There are also waiting periods to fill a prescription, and states require annual reports on death rates. The cocktail commonly used by most doctors is called DDMAPH, the cocktail of high doses of digoxin, that's a heart drug, diazepam or Valium, morphine, amitriptyline, which is an antidepressant that also affects heart rhythm, and phenobarbital, a barbiturate. Recent medications make it easy as a powder to pour into a glass of water or apple juice. People become unconscious within a few minutes, and the median time to death is typically under an hour, although it can be longer, according to an Oregon Health Authority report in 24. The choice is rarely made to use the drug. In the dozen states where it's legal, fewer than 1% of deaths are attributed to aid in dying. Figures are higher in such countries that have aid in dying laws, such as Canada, where it's about 5%, according to government records. Now, there's also no guarantee that people who are prescribed lethal medication use it. On average, about 30% of prescriptions aren't used, according to Death with Dignity. Opponents have cited concerns about the potential of abuse of vulnerable groups under such laws. Erentlich said, it's a slippery slope argument. It doesn't hold. A 2022 study using data over 23 years from American jurisdictions that have aid in dying laws showed that those who died from a legal prescription were overwhelmingly college-educated, white, and had cancer diagnoses. Oregon's 2024 report indicated more than half of the patients had cancer, followed by neurological disease and heart disease. A 2007 review of patients in Oregon and the Netherlands, which has been allowing euthanasia and aid in dying since 2002, found that those who received life-ending treatment tended to also be wealthier. There was no evidence of abuse for people with disabilities and racial or ethnic minorities, but people with AIDS had a higher chance of participating. American public opinion has gradually shifted to support aid in dying laws. More than 2/3 of the people surveyed support this legislation. Gallup poll found in 2024. A recent poll in New York, commissioned by a pro-medical aid in dying group, found 68% of registered voters supported the bill. Most who are religious or conservative staunchly oppose the practice. Paulin, the state lawmaker, introduced the bill in 2016, a year after her sister Jane died in hospice from ovarian cancer. Paulin said her death wasn't the motivating factor for the bill, but she did say she saw views change on aid in dying, particularly among younger lawmakers, and support grew from some former opponents who had experienced the prolonged death of terminally ill loved ones. Hochul, who is a Catholic, wrestled with the question before declaring in mid-December that she would sign the bill into law. In a statement, she pointed to her mother's death from ALS and the pain of seeing someone you love suffer and being powerless to stop it. Lawmakers agreed to be more to more restrictions to appease the governor. Among those that are mandatory, a 5-day waiting period from when the doctor writes the prescription and when it is filled, a required mental health evaluation by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and an oral request from the patient by video or audio. There are also limits on who can serve as a witness, measures to prevent any financial benefit from a patient's death, and an extension to 6 months before the law takes effect. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:30. And wrapping up, regardless, the New York State Catholic Conference issued a stern rebuke of the legislation. In a joint statement December 16, New York bishops said they pray that our state turns away from its promotion of a culture of death. The Catholic Church has firmly opposed what it sees as a sin akin to homicide and suicide, according to the Reverend Peter Clark, director of St. Joseph University. The Church is against any direct killing because it would go against the whole position on sanctity of human life, Clark said. God gives life. Only God takes away life. Ron, the New York grandmother, is also a Catholic. She wants to live. She's not suicidal, but she knows she's going to die from cancer. She does not want her death to be painful and prolonged. God doesn't want to see people suffer, she said. He's a compassionate God. The American Medical Association, which represents doctors nationwide, also opposes what it views as physician-assisted suicide. Its policy says the practices are fundamentally inconsistent with the physician's role as a healer. Conversely, the Medical Society of the State of New York, a doctors' association, supported the state's legislation. The group applauded a provision ensuring that physicians can opt out of helping a patient receive life-ending treatment. Dr. Charles Blank sees his role as helping people who are suffering and know they're dying. He's a professor of medicine at Oregon Health and Science University in Portland. He writes anywhere from 100 to 140 prescriptions for lethal medications every year. He issued his first prescription in 1998, the year after Oregon allowed its law to take effect after a Supreme Court ruling upheld the law. Most of Blank's patients come from out of state. About 2/3 of patients end up using the prescription, he said, but he does not suggest or push the prescription. Blank said his patients are suffering. They have no control over the diseases afflicting them after all other treatments have failed. I'm helping my patients who often don't have any other option, he said. Now, at her final party, Ron said she has a playlist ready, including an Elton John and Rina Sawayama song, Chosen Family. The food she'd serve would be up to her husband, Jeff, and she plans to have her 12-year-old dog by her side. After saying her goodbyes, she'd take her medication and fall asleep.
More than 60 dead after storm. Community mourns 3 brothers. From Dinah Voiles Pulver of USA Today. Dozens of names have been added to a mounting death toll from the January 23rd through 26th winter storm and the blast of polar air behind it, even as many Americans brace for another possible storm. At least 62 deaths have been reported across the nation through the evening of January 27th. Authorities were still investigating these cases and others. In Fannin County in northeast Texas, a community was heartbroken when 3 brothers, ages 6, 8, and 9, died after falling through the ice on a pond. Sheriff Cody Shook confirmed to USA Today. The family was playing outside when the youngest boy fell through the ice and his brothers tried to save him as their mother rushed toward them, CBS News reported. In other cases, teenagers died in motor vehicle and sledding accidents. At least 8 people died during or after shoveling or removing snow, authorities reported. The American Heart Association has warned the exertion of snow shoveling, especially in extreme cold, can lead to heart attacks. An Indiana man whose name was not released had been out shoveling his driveway 3 or 4 times on January 25th, said Adams County Coroner Francis Dutrow. The last time he went back into his house and collapsed and went into cardiac arrest. At least 2 women died in house fires, a danger that tends to spike during winter, according to the National Fire Protection Association. In South Carolina, a 96-year-old woman with dementia collapsed outside her home just after midnight on the morning of January 26th and died, according to the state's Department of Public Health. She was one of more than 24 people whose deaths were believed to be related to hypothermia and exposure. New York, where 10 people died outside, led the nation at the end of January 27th with 11 deaths. Next was 9 in Indiana, 8 in Louisiana, Tennessee, and Texas, 4 in Mississippi and Pennsylvania, 2 in Arkansas and Massachusetts, and 1 in each of Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and South Carolina. Now, how did people die? Investigations continue as authorities work in temperatures up to 30 degrees below normal and sub-zero wind chills in some cases to piece together why deaths occurred. They're trying to pinpoint, for example, whether icy roads and snow were the cause of at least 9 fatalities in car accidents throughout the storm. Law enforcement officials also were investigating why Juanita Cannon, 54, was found dead outside her car in Evansville, Indiana, and why Rubilio Mendez Reynoso, 31, of Buncombe County, North Carolina, was found dead lying along a road with no evidence of foul play. In Henrico County, Virginia, police said they were working to determine what happened when a toddler had to be rescued from an icy pond on January 26th. The child later died. An adult male at the scene at the pond was treated for possible hypothermia, according to a statement from Henrico police. Hospitals reported treating many who suffered medical emergencies while shoveling snow. The UMass Memorial Medical Center in Worcester, Massachusetts, where snow totals were as high as 22 inches, reported that over 24 hours on January 25th and 26th, it treated 7 patients with major heart attacks who had been shoveling snow. The 3 brothers who died, whose identities were not released by authorities, who cited the family's privacy, fell through pond ice on private property just outside Bonham, Texas, a small city near the Oklahoma border. First responders pulled the 2 oldest boys from the water with the help of a neighbor, but the third was not found until the pond was searched, according to the Fannin County Sheriff's Office. First aid was given to the older boys, and they were taken away in an ambulance. All 3 were pronounced dead. They were just screaming, telling me to help them, their mother, Cheyenne Hangeman, told the Associated Press. And I watched all of them struggle to stay above the water. I watched all of them fight. Hangeman told the AP that her daughter alerted her that the boys were in the water, and she ran across the street from where they were staying to help them, falling into the water herself. I would grab one, try to put him on ice, but the ice just kept breaking every time I would set him up there, she told the outlet. Hangeman said a man threw a rope to help get her out of the pond. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move, she said. By that time, I knew that my kids were already gone, so I just had to try to fight for my life at that point. The Bonham Independent School District in Texas confirmed 3 of its elementary students died.
Virginia court halts redistricting by the Democrats. A judge's ruling is going to be appealed immediately. Terry Collins of USA Today writes, a Virginia court on January 27th blocked a Democratic-led effort to redraw the state's congressional maps before the high-stakes 2026 midterms, a loss that could help the GOP keep control of the U.S. House. Democrats intended to ask voters on April 21 whether the General Assembly should be allowed, under limited circumstances, to redraw congressional and legislative districts instead of every 10 years. Tazewell Circuit Court Judge Jack Hurley Jr. struck down the Democrats' efforts, ruling that the lawmakers did not follow proper procedures to approve the proposed constitutional amendment to allow a redraw of the state's lines 3 months before the April election. That's required by law. The judge added that the amendment was improperly adopted and cannot advance to the ballot as scheduled. Virginia Democrats, who had hoped to pick up as many as 4 seats from the midterms, planning to appeal. State Democrats control 6 congressional seats, Republicans 5. Virginia's court decision is the latest salvo in a nationwide battle of several states seeking to change their district maps ahead of November's critical election, as President Donald Trump seeks to maintain control of Congress. This is a clear attempt to confuse voters and block them from having a say. Karen Charles Dongle, campaign manager for Virginians for Fair Elections, that's a Democratic-led group supporting the redistricting change, said in a statement on January 27, "We are prepared for what comes next, and Virginians deserve both the right to vote and the chance to level the playing field." State GOP leaders praised the judge's decision. The court confirmed that Democrat legislative leaders unlawfully expanded a special session, violated their own rules, and attempted to force through a redistricting constitutional amendment, while Virginians were already voting. Delegate Terry Kilgore, top Republican in the Virginia State House, State Senate Minority Leader Ryan McDougal, and former Republican U.S. Representative Eric Cantor, members of Virginians for Fair Maps, said in a joint statement. Virginia voters previously amended the state constitution in 2020 to establish a redistricting commission in place to oversee and redraw the state's maps every 10 years. That's why a redrawing of maps required more than simply passing a new law. McDougal, who also serves as a legislative commissioner of the Virginia Redistricting Commission and brought forth a lawsuit, said in a post on X, "The case was never about partisanship. It was about process, fairness, and the simple principle that you cannot change the Constitution by ignoring the Constitution." The court made clear that elections matter, notice matters, and the rules apply to everyone, even those in power, McDougal said. This ruling is a simple yet powerful statement. Democrats' partisan gerrymandering amendment was unlawful, and we hope they don't defy the order of the court. Virginia House and state Democratic leaders also released a statement on January 27th about the judge's decision. "Nothing that happened today is going to dissuade us from continuing to move forward and put this matter directly to the voters. Republicans who can't win at the ballot box are abusing the legal process in an attempt to sow confusion and block Virginians from voting," the lawmakers said. "We will be appealing this ruling immediately, and we expect to prevail." This was court shopping, plain and simple. So far, the atypical mid-decade redistricting battle has produced an additional 9 congressional seats. Republicans think that they can win in states, including Texas, which started the redistricting efforts and drew a new map that could add up to 5 Republican seats. Other GOP-led states, including Missouri, North Carolina, and Ohio, have made redistricting changes, and Florida is considering new maps. Last proposed redistricting map to create 2 new heavily red-leaning districts. Now, meanwhile, Democrats are optimistic that they can win 6 more congressional seats due to a new redistricting in California and Utah. In November, California voters passed Proposition 50. Now, that's a ballot initiative spearheaded by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom that temporarily pauses a nonpartisan commission that draws congressional district boundaries every 10 years. Proposition 50 sailed through with roughly 64% of the vote and was recently upheld by a federal appeals court ruling. California Republicans still plan to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court, as Democrats hope to add up to 5 seats to neutralize what just occurred in Texas.
Representative Omar attacked in Minnesota. Trump says he'll de-escalate. Assailant is arrested after spraying lawmaker. From Janine Santucci and Michael Loria of USA Today. President Donald Trump has said he will de-escalate immigration operations in Minnesota, but tensions remained high January 28th.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:45.
Continuing, a man attacked Representative Ilhan Omar with an unknown substance, and Trump warned that Minneapolis mayor was playing with fire. Omar, a frequent Trump target, was speaking at a town hall event late January 27th in Minneapolis when a man later identified as 55-year-old Anthony Kazmierzak rushed the congresswoman and sprayed her with an unknown substance. "It smells terrible," one person can be heard saying about the substance. According to the Minneapolis Police Department, the man used a syringe to spray an unknown liquid. Kazmierzak said something to Omar as he dosed her torso with the substance. It was unclear what he said. Omar paused the event briefly as bystanders tackled the man and he was arrested. The attack is being investigated by the Minneapolis Police Department and U.S. Secret Service. Omar appeared unharmed. Afterward, Omar put out a statement saying she would not be intimidated by this small agitator. "I'm okay. I'm a survivor, so this small agitator isn't going to intimidate me from doing my work. I don't let bullies win," said the representative of Minnesota's 5th Congressional District. Trump told ABC News on January 27th, without any supporting evidence, that Omar probably had sprayed herself, or had herself sprayed. Let me correct myself. She probably had herself sprayed. "I don't think about her. I think she's a fraud," Trump said in a phone interview. "She probably had herself sprayed, knowing her." At the time of the attack, Omar was calling for Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to be impeached after federal agents shot and killed Alex Preddy in Minneapolis on January 24th. Preddy's killing and the administration's reaction to it has sparked friction in the Republican Party, calls for Noem to be fired, and raised the threat of a partial government shutdown. Trump and his allies have taken a softer tone after Noem and other top officials initially described Preddy as a domestic terrorist and an assassin. The administration also has repeatedly suggested the shooting was justified because Preddy was carrying a gun, drawing ire from gun rights groups. Video shows that Preddy, holding a cell phone, intervened after a federal agent shoved a woman and did not appear to brandish his gun. The weapon was removed from him by an agent before Preddy was shot multiple times. An early government investigation into the shooting obtained by USA Today found 2 border agents fired their guns in the encounter. The inquiry by the Customs and Border Protection Offices of Professional Responsibility notes that the agency members began firing after an agent yelled, "He's got a gun," multiple times. The report from the Department of Homeland Security does not say whether the bullets from both agency members struck Preddy. Agency personnel began firing about 5 seconds after the agent yelled about Preddy's gun, the report notes. One of the officers who fired was a Border Patrol agent, and the other was a Customs and Border Protection officer, according to the report. Border Protection's preliminary findings were based on body-worn camera footage and agency documentation, according to the report. As the president vowed to de-escalate the tension in Minnesota, he warned that Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey was playing with fire after the mayor said the city would not enforce federal immigration laws. Trump raised Frey's remarks in a post on Truth Social January the 28th, after the 2 men spoke by phone the previous day. Surprisingly, Mayor Jacob Frey just stated that Minneapolis does not and will not enforce federal immigration laws, Trump wrote, referencing a statement Frey issued after meeting with Tom Homan, the Trump administration's border czar, who is now managing federal efforts in Minnesota. This is after having had a very good conversation with him. Could somebody in his inner sanctum please explain that this statement is a very serious violation of the law and that he is playing with fire? Trump said. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has expressed some hope of calm returning after also meeting with Homan. I'm ready for them to get out of here, and I think that's what Minnesotans are talking about, Walz said on January 27th. A federal judge has ruled that A federal judge has ruled that a Minnesota preschooler detained alongside his father cannot be deported for now. The ruling, filed in court on January 27th, says the government cannot remove Adrian Conejo Arias or his son, 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos, while the case is pending and until further order of the court, U.S. District Judge Fred Byery said. The detention of Conejo and Liam made national headlines and drew criticism after photos circulated showing the boy being detained in the driveway of his home as he wore a blue bunny hat on January the 20th.
More than 2/3 of Democrats in the House are now supporting the impeaching of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. And the headline, impeachment threat is growing for Kristi Noem. But odds of her removal from the post remain long. Zachary Shermill of USA Today writes, after Alex Preddy's killing at the hands of Border Patrol agents, a growing chorus of Democrats is calling for the impeachment of Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. While the odds of her removal remain long in the GOP-controlled Congress, the shift underscores the serious nature of an ongoing political crisis since the fatal shooting in Minnesota has prompted both a groundswell of activism from Democrats and rare Republican criticism of the White House. More than 2/3 of Democrats in the House now support impeaching Noem, a former Republican governor of South Dakota and an unwavering ally of President Trump. An impeachment resolution against Noem has picked up steam in the days since the federal agents shot and killed Preddy, a VA intensive care unit nurse. The measure now has nearly 150 co-sponsors. Secretary Noem has blood on her hands, according to Representative Robin Kelly, a Democrat from Illinois, who introduced the impeachment articles in a statement. Under her leadership, Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good were murdered. On January 27, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries solidified the threat, saying if Trump does not fire Noem, immediately House Democrats will initiate impeachment proceedings. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, he said in a statement. At the same time, even more centrist Senate Democrats who voted to confirm Noem last year have been changing their tune and expressing regret. Senator John Fetterman, Democrat from Pennsylvania, who supported Noem's confirmation, is now urging President Trump to fire her, although he didn't specifically use the word impeachment. She is betraying the Department of Homeland Security's core mission and trashing your border security legacy, he wrote, addressing the president in a January 27 social media post. Nevada Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen, who cast a critical vote in November to end the longest government shutdown, wants Noem gone as well. In her interview, impeachment is the way to do it. Kristi Noem has been an abject failure, leading the Department of Homeland Security for the last year, and the abuses of power we're seeing from ICE are the latest proof she has lost control over her own department and staff, she said in a statement. Along with most other Senate Democrats, she's also withholding her support for a government spending package this week over DHS funding, dramatically raising the likelihood of a partial government shutdown after January 30. In a statement to USA Today, Assistant DHS Secretary Tricia McLaughlin denounced politicians, she said, are defending criminals while criticizing law enforcement officers who have been facing more dangers on the job. Department of Homeland Security enforces the laws Congress passes, period. If certain members don't like those laws, changing them is literally their job, McLaughlin said. It's time they focus on protecting the American people, the work this department is doing every day under Secretary Noem's leadership. Now, Noem has defended DHS's response to Preddy's killing, although notable portions of her initial statements following the incident, namely that Preddy violently resisted being disarmed, have been contradicted by video evidence. He was killed only after agents took away his gun, which he was not brandishing and had a license to carry. In the days following the fatal shooting, Trump chose not to send Noem to Minneapolis to handle the fallout. Instead, he sent border czar Tom Homan, a decision the Homeland Security Secretary praised. This is good news for peace, safety, and accountability in Minneapolis, Noem said after Homan was dispatched. The president on January 27 directly said Noem won't be stepping down. He told reporters his administration was undertaking a big investigation of the situation. He pledged the review would be honorable and honest. She's done a very good job, Trump said. Noem is scheduled to face lawmakers at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing March the 3rd.
From the money section of USA Today, company eyes hotel on the moon. But it won't be cheap with cost topping $416K a night. Wow, oh boy. From Michelle Del Rey of USA Today. As Americans prepare to once again attempt to reach the moon, something that hasn't been done in more than 50 years, one startup company has grand plans to be the first to put a hotel on Earth's only natural satellite. GRU Space, a San Francisco-based startup, wants to build the first hotel on the moon by 2032, the company announced in a news release on January the 12th. GRU has even started asking potential customers to put down $1 million deposit to stay at the yet-to-be-completed structure. According to the company, the cost for a stay would be an estimated $416,000 plus a night. If it's built, the hotel would be the first permanent off-Earth structure in history. It would accommodate 4 guests for several days. USA Today asked GRU how many people have signed up but did not get an immediate response. What will the Moon Hotel be? How will the Moon Hotel be built, and what might it look like? GRU expects to construct the initial hotel on Earth and ship it to the moon as is. It would then be inflated on the moon's surface. The first iteration of the hotel is expected to last 10 years, and the second is expected to last 20. The company expects to begin construction of the first hotel in 2029, pending regulatory approval. Okay, go ahead.
You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, January the 29th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Ken Drost.
and Jim Duffy. And beginning with our sports page, and an article regarding our Buffalo Bills, among others, of course. This article is titled QB Among Bills Hiring Winners. This article is accompanied by an inset picture of Bills quarterback Josh Allen talking with offensive coordinator Joe Brady during camp. And it is authored by Tyler Dragon of the USA Today. The Buffalo Bills promoted Joe Brady to head coach, a team announced January 27th, with Brady agreeing to a 5-year deal. Brady was Buffalo's interim offensive coordinator for part of 2023. He was elevated to the team's full-time offensive coordinator role in 2024. Brady's promotion means Buffalo decided to hire within as its head coaching search comes to a close 8 days after Bills ownership fired Sean McDermott, who compiled a record of 106-58, including the postseason, in 9 years as the franchise's head coach. What does Brady's hire mean for the Bills franchise? USA Today Sports examines the winners and losers after Brady agreed to the terms to be the Bills head coach. First, the winners. Bills offense. With Brady as offensive coordinator, the Bills ranked among the top 5 in the NFL in several offensive categories this past season. Some of those categories include first in rushing yards per game at 159.6 yards, first in time of possession, 33 minutes and 8 seconds per game, fourth in third down efficiency, 44.8%, fourth in points per game at 28.3, and fourth in total offense at 376.3 yards per game. The Bills' offense should again be strong next year. Expect Buffalo to attempt to get more weapons on the outside for Josh Allen. Now, speaking of Allen, Brady's promotion to head coach means there will be continuity with the offense. The offensive philosophy, playbook, and language shouldn't change much, if at all, under Brady's leadership. Brady took over as Buffalo's offensive coordinator in 2024 and helped Allen earn MVP honors. Since then, Allen leads the NFL with 79 offensive touchdowns. Allen has had a passer rating of better than 100 for 2 consecutive seasons, 2024 and 25, for the first time in his career with Brady as offensive coordinator. James Cook. With Brady as offensive coordinator, Cook's 16 rushing touchdowns were tied for a league high last year. The Bills' running back rushed for an NFL best and career high 1,621 yards in the regular season. Cook averaged better than 5 yards per carry and tallied 1,912 yards from scrimmage. Brady emphasizes the run game, and Cook is a big beneficiary. Now the losers. The Rooney Rule. There were NFL 10 head coaching jobs available during this year's hiring cycle. 7 of those vacancies have been filled. Robert Saleh, who accepted the Tennessee Titans head coaching position, represents the only minority candidate hired as a head coach to this point. The Las Vegas Raiders, Cleveland Browns, and Arizona Cardinals are the only 3 head coaching vacancies left. There are currently only 3 black head coaches in the NFL, a stark contrast to the roughly 70% black players on the field. Sean McDermott. The Bills fired Dermott after 9 seasons, only to replace him with his offensive coordinator. McDermott produced a 98-50 regular season record and won 5 straight AFC East titles during his tenure. Of course, McDermott left without a single Super Bowl appearance. Does he deserve most of the blame for an 8-8 playoff record as Buffalo's head coach? There's enough blame to go around, including some toward Allen. McDermott, however, took the hit. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals coach Zach Taylor was on the hot seat this year before owner Mike Brown announced his decision to retain Taylor and director of player personnel Duke Tobin. Brady would have been an ideal candidate to be Cincy's head coach. Brady was the passing game coordinator and receivers coach at LSU during Burrow's magical Heisman Trophy and national championship season in 2019.
You become hated. Is Bill Belichick's Hall of Fame snub tied to his historic NFL run? Again, Tyler Dragon of USA Today writes, and by the way, just a footnote, I never found Joe Brady to be offensive as a coordinator. A little annoying sometimes. Apparently, a resume that consists of 8 Super Bowl championships, 6 as a head coach, 2 as an assistant, and the second most wins all time, including the playoffs. It's not enough to garner a first ballot Hall of Fame nod. People around the NFL and even some Pro Football Hall of Fame voters are left mystified as to why Bill Belichick isn't a first ballot inductee. The 2026 Pro Football Hall of Fame class is going to be revealed on February the 5th at the NFL Honors event. Belichick reportedly not going to even be part of the group. Now, some things are just a no-brainer. His work speaks for itself. We should all be judged on that. Willie McGinnis, who won 3 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots and is a member of the team's Hall of Fame, told USA Today Sports, "I think sometimes voters and people who aren't really into the game don't understand that. They just look at straight numbers. They don't look at all the different things you did. When you look at his body of work, that's when you have to look at all the different ways that he won, and with who and how he won, and some of the decision making. Belichick reportedly didn't receive the 40 out of 50 votes required. He's among the seniors, coach, and contributor voting categories. According to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, 5 finalists from those categories will be combined into a second group for voting by selectors. No more than 3, nor fewer than 1 may be elected. Approval from at least 80% of the selectors is required for the actual election, meaning that there were at least 11 selectors who did not vote for Belichick. Now, being so successful and winning so much makes people not like you. If you win too much, people don't like you, McGinnis said. You become the hated. The senior finalists are Kenny Anderson, Roger Craig, and L.C. Greenwood. The coach finalist is Belichick, while Patriots owner Robert Kraft is a contributor finalist. I thought he was in. I didn't see that coming, one Hall of Fame voter told USA Today Sports. They spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the matter and the selection process. One Hall of Fame voter told USA Today Sports that Spygate and Deflategate, the cheating scandals that arose during the Patriots dynasty, factored into Belichick's first ballot Hall of Fame omission. Spygate cost the Belichick-led Patriots a first-round draft pick. In addition, NFL Commissioner Robert Goodell fined the Patriots $500,000. They fined Belichick $250,000. In 2015, the NFL suspended Tom Brady for 4 games, fined the Patriots $1 million, and docked the team 2 draft picks as punishment for Deflategate. According to ESPN, former Buffalo Bills and Indianapolis Colts general manager Bill Polian, who is a Hall of Fame selector, told some voters he believed Belichick should wait a year as retribution for Spygate. Polian later denied telling fellow voters that Belichick should have to wait a year as punishment for Spygate, and said he couldn't remember with certainty if he even voted for Belichick, according to ESPN. Not surprised, based on the recent changes in the voting and the discussion about the candidates in the room. He's deserving. I voted for him, another Hall of Fame voter told USA Today Sports. And they also spoke on condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the matter and the selection process. Another Hall of Fame voter said there could have been some anti-New England bias among some voters. Everybody has their biases, the Hall of Fame voter said to USA Today Sports. Several people around the NFL admitted the Hall of Fame voters and the selection criteria have suffered a credibility hit as a result of Belichick's snub. The man has 8 Super Bowls. I don't think anyone will ever duplicate the run that he had in a couple of decades. McGinnis said, "Whether you like him, you hate him, you love him, you've got to respect what the man did. I think it goes without saying, no coach in the modern era of the NFL has accomplished what he has accomplished."
In an article regarding Super Bowl 60, Big Game revisits Plug and Play, Levi's Stadium. High-tech facility nestled in Silicon Valley prepares for its second Super Bowl. From Joe Mock of USA Today Sports. When the San Francisco 49ers began planning for a new home to replace Candlestick Park a quarter century ago, team executives had a clear vision. Denise DiBartolo York, chairman of the board, and her husband John York made no secret they desired that their stadium should be the premier sports and entertainment venue in the country. Architecture firm HNTB worked closely with the 49ers on possible designs for a stadium. The initial plan was to build on the windswept parking lots of Candlestick Point. Later, the location moved to a site adjacent to the team's practice facility, 38 miles to the south and decidedly more temperate Santa Clara at the southern end of San Francisco Bay. Lanson Nichols, Senior Vice President in NHTB Sports Architecture Group, is in his 39th year with the firm. As their pro football practice leader, he worked closely with the Yorks, including their son Jed, who became team president in 2008 on the design of what is today known as Levi's Stadium. It opened in 2014. In delivering on the Yorks' vision of creating the nation's premier venue, it has not only served as the 49ers' home, it hosted college football's national championship game, WrestleMania, the NHL's Stadium Series, numerous international soccer matches, Beyoncé, the Grateful Dead, Morgan Wallen, and stops on 3 different Taylor Swift tours. This June and July, Levi's Stadium will host 6 matches in the FIFA World Cup Soccer Tournament. Don't be thrown off when broadcasts refer to the venue as San Francisco Bay Area Stadium. That's required by FIFA. And on February 8th, Santa Clara will host Super Bowl 60, 10 years after Levi's Stadium initial Super Bowl. If ever a stadium was designed to host a Super Bowl, it's Levi's Stadium. The NFL has a bid packet that it provides to operators of stadiums interested in hosting the sport's biggest game. We got a hold of several of those, Nichols says. We studied those during the course of designing the stadium and worked closely with the 49ers about how to accommodate what the NFL wanted so they could be part of the Super Bowl rotation. The requirements of hosting a Super Sunday go far beyond a regular season game, with more hospitality areas, media members, a halftime show spectacular, international broadcast networks, etc. The necessity for additional data capacity alone was staggering, but HNTB and the 49ers designed Levi Stadium to accommodate it all. It did not hurt that an abundance of high-tech expertise surrounds Santa Clara in the heart of Silicon Valley. Much like having the answer key for a college exam, the 49ers aced the NFL's test. Before the first game was played at Levi Stadium, the NFL had awarded the 50th anniversary Super Bowl to Santa Clara. So impressed was the NFL with the facility's features, the league incorporated the silhouette of the venue in the official logo of the big game. That move hasn't happened again since. After Super Bowl 50 in 2016, the feedback we got was that it was the first plug-and-play Super Bowl venue that the broadcasters and so forth had experienced, Nichols explained. There were other considerations to accommodate Super Bowls when designing Levi Stadium. Jack Hill, head of Hill Sports and Entertainment Consulting, acted as the owner's representative on the project, representing the 49ers' interests in financing, design, and construction. One thing they always look for is that how easy is the venue to get into and out of, especially when you consider the stages and lighting that must be brought onto the field for halftime shows and quickly removed at their conclusion. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 1:15. Continuing, Hill notes that Levi Stadium shines in this regard as there are 3 tunnels running from the exterior to the field, as well as offering massive space under the stands where the stage and personnel can be held waiting for halftime to arrive. And when all of this works together, it's a good experience for the fans. There will be an abundance of overhead shots of Levi Stadium during NBC's telecast on Super Sunday. These shots highlight one of the facility's most unusual features, its shape. It is anything but symmetrical. The footprint is quite different than other outdoor stadiums, as the majority of suites and media booths are stacked in a line running parallel to the gridiron's west sideline. The other 3 sides form more of a smooth oval, with stands running from the field all the way to the top row. Was this done due to some oddities of the shape of the stadium's site? It's true that the selected site in Santa Clara posed significant challenges. The water table is very close to the surface, preventing evacuation, meaning the structure was built upward from the street level. At the same time, there were severe limitations on its height, as the site is in a flight path for nearby San Jose International Airport. None of this necessitated the stadium's unique shape, though. It had nothing to do with the site, to be candid with you, said Scott Kapstack, who was on the HNTB's design team. This was really driven by the vision of the York family. They really liked the concept of unifying the bulk of the premium spaces in a tower on the west stands. The York family had a different reason why they preferred that the other 3 sides of the stadium look like familiar college stadiums. One in particular, both John and Jed York graduated from the University of Notre Dame, while Denise York graduated from St. Mary's College, the Catholic women's school across the street from Notre Dame. The hotel venue of the Fighting Irish was the model. The York family really liked the collegial kind of atmosphere of as big of a lower bowl as possible, with minimal breaks in that bowl, said Kapstack. Almost 40,000 seats at Levi Stadium are in that 3-sided bowl. Since there are no levels of enclosed suites, it really gets fans as close to the action as possible. This creates an intimidating atmosphere, giving the 49ers the kind of home field advantage enjoyed by college teams. One other element you might notice from the overhead drone shots is that it looks like it was never finished at the top, observes Hill. That was intentional, so that we could have a green roof with a garden. The team calls this space the Faithful Farm. Herbs and vegetables grown in this 13,000 square foot garden are used in dishes served in the suites and clubs of the stadium. This rooftop garden is just one of the many green elements in the stadium's design. This allowed the facility to be awarded with Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is LEED, gold status in 2014, making it the first pro football stadium to achieve this status upon its opening. Was a dome ever considered for Levi Stadium? After all, most new NFL stadiums coming online in the next few years will have roofs. There was the traditional feeling that it should be outside. It's just such a nice climate there, says Nichols. The 49ers also wanted to play on natural grass. Plus, a roof would add time and cost, so a roof wasn't seriously considered. For fans who attended the matchup of the Denver Broncos and Carolina Panthers in Super Bowl 50 and are now making a return trip to Santa Clara, they may or may not see quite a few changes at the venue. We've completed about 35 projects in that 10-year span, explains Kapstack, who is now the populace working with the 49ers reimagining Levi Stadium. These improvements include the addition of field seats and field clubs in the end zones, $200 million worth of new video boards and sound system and renovations of all the suites. Perhaps the biggest undertaking was removing seats closest to the sideline so the field itself could be expanded to accommodate a regulation-sized pitch for the FIFA World Cup matches. We're constantly looking at everything that optimizes the experience for the fans, the players, the sponsorship partners, as well as the staff. Kapstack says, the 49ers continues to make the building the best it could possibly be. If a fan hasn't been in the building for 10 years, he might not notice the improvements, but the team continually wants to enhance the original vision of the building and elevate it. Preparing a stadium for a Super Bowl is such a daunting task that there are two separate teams of personnel at NFL headquarters whose sole job is to plan all aspects of the event. One team works on Super Bowl and even years, and the other tackles the odd years. Yes, it takes 2 full years to create and implement the planning, but the NFL staff can't do it on its own, so it brings in experts to work in their areas of specialization. Small A, big AM is the events construction manager. Sunbelt Electric is the electrical contractor. ME Engineers handles the electrical engineering. Adaptive Structure Solutions provides temporary operations booths and entry tent structures. Wasserman Live fabricates and installs event decor. Metropolis does transportation planning. On Location Experiences oversees the hospitality services. Fate does the Super Bowl tailgate. I-Team oversees the game day experience. And delivering the event overlay master plan that determines where the physical elements go is Populous. Todd Barnes, who worked with the NFL on all of their international games, Brazil, Ireland, United Kingdom, Germany, Spain this season, leads their team. After logging all of those air miles in the past 6 months, he deserves a break, as the San Francisco resident doesn't have to catch a flight to get to Santa Clara. In a perfect world, we would have somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million square feet of usable space on the stadium site, but that's not always achievable, says Barnes. Adding to the tight conditions is the fact that neither the 49ers nor the city of Santa Clara control all of the nearby land needed for this build-out, necessitating separate negotiations with all those property owners. We just have to work our magic in terms of how we can configure all the components. We have to ensure that the front of the house is separated from the back of the house, so that the adjacency relationships work for how things flow through the stadium site and into the stadium. This is done so that the fans are never aware that all of these operational elements are taking place just right behind them. And there are contingencies for everything. Barnes explains that that had the 49ers advanced to Super Bowl 60, their home field advantage wouldn't have been like the regular season. The team would have been forced to vacate its training facility next door, as the NFL requires teams to use off-site practice facilities that they designate. If the President of the United States could go down to the game and we're able to figure out a plan to keep him safe and separated from the teams, we can figure out just about anything, says Barnes. I love these challenges that they throw at us. It's to me the most exciting part of figuring out the pieces of the puzzle that is the Super Bowl. Come Super Sunday, I think it's all going to function in the most amazing way.
The family calls Koepka back. Cameron Jordan of Golf Week writes the following article. For perhaps the first time in his golf career, Brooks Koepka offered a glimpse into who he is outside the ropes. The 5-time major champion is about as stern as they come. He couldn't care less what others think about his golf, what he says, what he believes. He wants to win golf's biggest prizes and go home. Nothing else matters. He stays in his own lane, focuses on nobody but himself. He's as macho of a man as golf has produced in the 21st century. And it's a big reason that he has been one of the best players in the world in that time span. On Tuesday, January 27th, the curtain was peeled back, and for essentially the first time, golf fans, media, and others who follow the sport saw a side of Koepka he's not shown in his career. Brooks, the husband, the father, the family man. This week, Koepka made his return to the PGA Tour at the Farmers Insurance Open, rejoining the tour a little more than a month after being released from his LIV golf contract. The time in between has been a frenzy. Phone calls with tour leadership, returning member program being created to give Koepka and 3 others an avenue back to the tour, and plenty of nervousness about what the future holds. His return comes at a time when his family needed him most, but perhaps he needs his family even more. A lot's gone on over the past 5, 6 months with my family. That played a big role into coming back, Koepka said, during a pre-tournament news conference at Torrey Pines. Then, just having conversations with my wife, my team, and being able to make that decision to come back was, I guess, tough conversations. But it was what was best for me and best for my family. I think that was a decision that my wife, myself, and everybody, my team, thought that was best as well. Koepka has not spoken publicly about his family's issues, but his wife, Jenna Sims Koepka, explained what she, Brooks, and son Crew went through on October 6th. Jenna shared on social media that their second child's heart stopped beating while she was 16 weeks pregnant. This is a grief no parent is ever prepared for. We are devastated, but remain hopeful to give Crew a sibling one day, she shared on social media. Koepka was asked about when he started thinking of returning to the PGA Tour, and he detailed a time in late September that lines up with the timeline when Jenna's pregnancy encountered issues. He recalls being in New York during Ryder Cup week, saying that's when his mind started wondering what was next. I'm not going to get into too much detail about the family issues that we've had, Koepka said. Circumstances kind of changed in my family a little bit. Then that's when I guess things started to change and evolve and just started to have those conversations of what's best for my family. So we took it from there. Koepka is one of LIV Golf's most successful players since the league began in 2022. He was the first player to win 5 events on LIV, but his win at the 2023 PGA Championship gave the league legitimacy and was a big catalyst in signing Jon Rahm later that year. Last year was the first time Koepka did not win on LIV, and he hasn't played worldwide in nearly 4 months. That's ahead of his Thursday tee time at Torrey Pines. Since that win at the PGA, Koepka has also struggled in the majors, missing the cut in 3 out of 4 in 2025. Then came Jenna's pregnancy loss. And just like the PGA Tour has changed in nearly 4 years since Koepka departed, he's changed a lot too. A lot of it has to do with becoming a father. Having a 2.5-year-old will make you grow up pretty quick, Koepka said. It's so much fun. Being a dad, being a father has made me grow as a person. Definitely try to give him the best example, the best way to live, and it's what I'm trying to do. I think everybody in this room goes through phases in life, and it's kind of the phase I'm in now. Trying to make sure I set a good example for him and do what's best for my family. And what's best for Koepka's family, he said, is returning to the PGA Tour. He mentioned his family 14 times during his news conference, by far the most of any topic he was asked about. There were hardly any questions about the state of his game or the mindset heading into the new chapter of his professional career, but he continually tied his answers back toward Jenna and Crew. When Koepka was asked what he missed most about the PGA Tour, he said having his family around him all the time. I think that was one thing, because they didn't travel too much over the last few years. They're going to be out this week, so I am super excited to be able to have them out. Just having my family around is really important, Koepka continued. I've grown up a lot over the past few years, and especially the last few months. Just, being able to be close to them, that's super important to me. Koepka did not get into specifics, but he thanked LIV Golf CEO Scott O'Neill and Yasser Al-Rumayyan, the chairman of LIV and governor of the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which finances the league, for how they handled his departure. His loss is massive for LIV Golf, which is down one of the biggest faces going into 2026 and amid rumors about the possible departures of other stars. Koepka was released from his LIV golf contract on December 23rd. January 12th, his return to the PGA Tour was announced. Koepka has to pay a $5 million sum to charity on top of other financial penalties tied to the player equity program. I'm very, very close with everybody on my team. I value their opinion and what they have to say, Koepka said. Everybody pretty much said the same thing. You got to do what's best for you and your family. And for the first time in his career, Koepka's family, and not his golf, is paving his path forward in the game.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:30. Men racing for number one seeds in March Madness. From Jordan Mendoza of USA Today. College men's basketball this season is top-heavy, with the top 10 of the USA Today Sports Coaches poll having a combined 14 losses and no one with more than 3 defeats. That makes for a fun race to grab a precious number one seed. We all saw last season how valuable the number one seed is when all 4 top teams in the bracket made it to the Final Four. The second time it's happened since seeding began in 1979. With how strong the top teams in the country look, that very much could happen again, making it paramount to get the top spots in the bracket and get the inside track to Indianapolis. Selection Sunday is 6 weeks away, but we are getting a good sense of who is in the running to be a number one seed in the 2026 NCAA tournament. There are 8 teams in this discussion, and well, of course, 4 of them may very well end up with the number one seed. And there are one last records to date. First is Arizona with a 21, and they're undefeated, 21-0. Next is Michigan with a record of 19 victories and 1 loss. Third, University of Connecticut with a 20. They've won 20 games, lost 1. Duke with a 19-1 record. Nebraska with a 20-1 record. Gonzaga, they are 21-1. Houston is 17-2, and Iowa State is 18-2. And granted, those are the one-lost records as of today's date. So things could change between now and March.
Majors weigh heavily on the 2026 wish list. Beth Ann Nichols of Golf Week writes, the 2025 LPGA season was a weird one. Nelly Korda did not win, but it felt like everybody else did, with 29 different winners. Gino Tidicul swept everything that mattered by the end, but with 3 wins and no majors, nobody really dominated. The LPGA needs more flash this year. 5 things we'd like to see on the LPG inside the ropes next, with Nelly ending this drought the most obvious. Charlie Hull wins a major. The most marketable player on the LPGA who's willing to put in time is England's Charlie Hull. While the LPGA could certainly do more to make Hull more visible, particularly here in the U.S., the fastest way to get there is for Hull to win a major. She's come close before, as recently as last year's AIG Women's British Open at the Royal Porthcawl, where she took a share of second. Hull, 29, has 4 runner-up finishes at the majors. Next, Gino wins a major. While we're handing out majors, world number 1 Tidicul is overdue. She came oh so close at the Amundi Evian Championships last year and would have checked it off the list were it not for some all-world heroics from Grace Kim with her Eagle Birdie Eagle finish in France. Tidicul has 9 top 10 finishes in 27 career major starts. But the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to become. Next, a Hollywood ending at Riviera. The U.S. Women's Open is long overdue for a star-studded winner. What better place than Riviera Country Club, where Ben Hogan won the Men's Open in 1948. This will be the first women's major ever contested at Riviera, and it deserves a storybook week. Also, the right winner could easily do some late-night TV and get plenty of outside the golf world attention in Los Angeles. Next, Solheim Cup Stunner. There will be Solheim Cup rookies in the Netherlands in 2026. But could one of them be 20-year-old German Helen Bream? The 6'3" powerhouse just earned her LPGA card for next season. Currently ranks 84th in the world. Few events can launch a player into the spotlight like the Solheim, and the tour sure could use another headliner. Next, Co adds a fourth different major. The LPGA Hall of Fame's newest member has won 3 majors: the 2015 Evian, 2016 ANA Inspiration, now Chevron, and 2024 AIG Women's British Open. She's still chasing the U.S. Women's Open and KPMG Women's PGA. Co thinks she needs to win both to achieve the career Grand Slam. But the tour says otherwise, saying players only need 4. Either way, it's a debate we'd love to have next season.
Wembanyama shares insight on Minnesota being a foreigner in the United States. From Mark Giannotto of USA Today, San Antonio Spurs star Victor Wembanyama prefaced what he said about the recent shootings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good as part of federal immigration enforcement operations in Minneapolis with an initial disclaimer. PR has tried, he said, but I'm not going to sit here and give some politically correct answer. The 22-year-old from France then expressed dismay and disgust over the incidents, but admitted he didn't feel comfortable offering his complete thoughts on the situation as the debate over the Trump administration's immigration tactics rages nationally. Every day I wake up and see the news and I'm horrified, Wembanyama told reporters on Tuesday, January 27th. I think it's crazy that some people make it seem like, or make it sound like, it's acceptable. Like the murder of civilians is acceptable. Every day I read the news and sometimes I'm asking very deep questions about my own life. But I'm conscious also that saying everything that's on my mind will have a cost that's too great for me right now. So I'd rather not go into too many details. When asked later if being a foreigner in the United States played into his hesitancy, he answered, "For sure." Wembanyama is the latest NBA player to be asked to comment in the wake of Preddy's death in Minneapolis on Saturday, January 24th, which led to the postponement of an NBA regular season game between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors. Stephen Curry and Warriors coach Steve Kerr, Indiana Pacers star Tyrese Halliburton, Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers, New York Knicks forward and former Timberwolves star Karl Anthony Towns, as well as the National Basketball Players Association, have condemned the shooting publicly. Following the news of yet another fatal shooting in Minneapolis, a city that has been on the forefront of the fight against injustices, NBA players can no longer remain silent, the NBAPA said in a statement. Now, more than ever, we must defend the right to freedom of speech and stand in solidarity with the people in Minnesota, protesting and risking their lives to demand justice. Wembanyama is in the midst of a breakthrough third season with the Spurs near the top of the Western Conference standings, followed the Union's lead. It's terrible. I know, I'm a foreigner, and I live in this country, and I'm concerned, he said.
Moving now into the life section. Fox reunites with Lawrence for a role on Shrinking. This is a streaming article, or an article on streaming, by Eric Jensen of USA Today. A new but familiar face is going to appear in the third season of Shrinking. That's Apple TV's slice-of-life dramedy about a trio of therapists and their loved ones moving through the world. Jimmy, played by Jason Segel, who was raised... Jimmy, played by Jason Segel, who is raising his teenage daughter while grieving the loss of his wife, works alongside Gabby, played by Jessica Williams, who's growing restless at the practice, owned by Paul, played by Harrison Ford. Michael J. Fox appears in 3 episodes as Jerry, who, like Paul, has Parkinson's disease. The two met at a doctor's office during the January 28th premiere. I take great pride in pulling Mike out of retirement every few years, according to Bill Lawrence, who created the series with Siegel and Brett Goldstein. Fox and Lawrence first worked together on the political sitcom Spin City, 1996 through 2002. The actor left his starring role in 2000 to prioritize time with his family and finding a cure for the progressive neurodegenerative condition, which he was diagnosed with, by the way, in 1991. Fox primarily did voice work until Lawrence recruited him for a 2-episode stint on his hospital comedy Scrubs in 2004. He was one of my first real mentors. Lawrence, who's 57, acknowledges of Michael J. Fox, who's now 64. He's one of those actors that turned out to be exactly the way you would hope he would be. Just from being a fan. Such a great influence on me. And then, when I really needed him on Scrubs, I was able to call him and he came and he did it. It was super cool for me. Now, after Scrubs, Fox had multi-episode arcs on series, including Boston Legal, and he became a recurring character on The Good Wife, also appearing on the spin-off The Good Fight. But on the Christine Baranski-led series, the veteran Fox had trouble memorizing his lines. A key element of this process is remembering lines. I can't do it, Fox shared as a guest on comedian Mike Birbiglia's podcast, Working It Out, back in 2022. I don't take on something with a lot of lines because I can't do it. But Michael Fox was so intrigued by Shrinking, he had to be a part of it. I thought Mike had kind of called it quits on acting for real, and we crossed paths, Lawrence says. I was so overjoyed that he was a fan of the show. Michael applauded the series' commitment to authenticity, portraying Parkinson's. Lawrence's grandfather and Goldstein's father were both diagnosed with Parkinson's. Now, Mike made the mistake of going, "Yo, but you're a expletive jerk for not asking me to do it," Lawrence says. Kind of a funny way to approach it. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, you'd be interested in it?" And he's like, "Dude, I would love to do it." So anytime he makes that mistake with me, he's going to be back on television. It could have been an easy cop-out because they're therapists. It takes place in California, Lawrence adds. He could just be playing Michael J. Fox as a cameo. But he's like, and I want to play a character. I just want to be one of the ensemble. Jerry, not one to wallow in his diagnosis, can be seen in the trailer joking about being at the doctor for a haircut. Lawrence couldn't help but be inspired by Fox's real-life outlook. You don't really live in the world of self-pity when you are around him, Lawrence says. We are all a couple of steps removed, at most, from someone with MS or Parkinson's or cancer or whatever. It doesn't have to be something that casts a dark shadow over everybody's life. There's no better person to represent that on our show than Mike.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:44. And this is a movie review. Momoa and Bautista add depth while wrecking lots of things, from Brian Truitt of USA Today. There is an art to the casting of a buddy action movie. Pair the right clashing personalities. You get Lethal Weapon or Tango and Cash. Mess it up, you're stuck with Cop Out or Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. The Wrecking Crew, which received 3 out of 4 stars rated R, streaming on Prime Video, gives us not only a successful team-up, but also a two-dude bromance that feels as if there could be some real dysfunctional brotherly love at work. Dave Bautista and Jason Momoa bust heads, others as well as their own, with the best of them, but also add muscular charm and some familial gravitas to boost this Fast and Furious style action jam directed by Angel Manuel Soto of Blue Beetle fame. When their private eye Hawaiian father dies in a suspicious hit-and-run incident, two estranged half-brothers are brought together for the first time in a decade. James Hale, who's played by Bautista, is a steely Navy man in Honolulu who's a hard case at work and at home and has no patience for shenanigans. The younger Johnny Hale, who played by Momoa, is a walking, talking, tattooed shenanigan, a brash cop in Oklahoma, suspended for excessive force. So he's got the time to travel back home to Hawaii for the funeral, where the reunion between him and James is predictably awkward. There's a lot of simmering hard feelings between the two, which are slowly revealed through the film, and neither of them particularly like their dad, who had connections to the underworld. Still, James and Johnny both begin investigating his death separately until they finally work together and wind up tussling with Yakuza ninjas, bad guys in helicopters and motorcycles, and an extremely shady real estate guy, who was a very punchable Claus Bang. And if you're wondering why it's called The Wrecking Crew, well, you don't put Momoa and Bautista in the same movie for a tea party. Between all the bickering and macho posturing, they managed to leave so much vehicular damage and injurious mayhem in their wake that it's hard to tamp down the explosive ecstasy of your inner 10-year-old. Before this, Bautista and Momoa have mostly stuck to their own superhero worlds, the former's Drax being a guardian of the galaxy, the latter's Aquaman, a Justice Leaguer, and did co-star, among other things, in the Dune movies. But there's a winning yin and yang dynamic to the actors that's a hoot to watch. Bautista is the more serious, too old for this stuff guy. Momoa is the loose cannon. And yet they feed off each other's energy and their characters become more alike than not in a believable manner. And yes, they're action heroes of the A-plus sort, but they also bring a meaty amount of emotion to match their biceps, including one sequence where fisticuffs lead to a heartfelt, cathartic convo years in the making. Jacob Batalon, also known as Tom Holland's buddy in the Spider-Man movies, has a fun role as a brother's reluctant tech expert sidekick. Morena Baccarin is splendidly sassy as Johnny's love interest, and Stephen Root plays the cop trying to deal with the bros' wanton property destruction. It's only January, and between this and The Rip, the streaming gods have gifted us with a couple of solid, enjoyable action flicks. There are parts of Wrecking Crew that could be better, including an intriguing subplot involving Hawaiian homelands that's merely touched on. However, full tilt Momoa and quietly powerful Bautista with some gore and goofiness tossed in is a satisfying improvement on the usual two-fisted formula. Okay.
With broadcast ahead, Thompson is enjoying his and hers whirlwind. Again, streaming, and Patrick Ryan of USA Today fronts this article. Spoiler alert, the following story contains major plot details about Netflix's series His and Hers. Stop listening now if you don't want to know the ending. I'll go ahead anyway. New York Dateline. Tessa Thompson has no clue why everybody's posting 2016 throwback photos. I'm so bad at social media, the Creed star says with a warm smile and a self-deprecating shrug. I'm assuming it has something to do with American politics at the moment, the better times. Lately, she has been perusing Instagram more than usual to gauge reaction to His and Hers, which, by the way, is now streaming, a 6-episode murder mystery that has been Netflix's #1 show for the past 2 weeks. Thompson produces and stars in the limited series, which is based on Alice Feeney's 2020 novel and ends with a truly unguessable twist. I've been really proud of the internet, says Thompson, who's aged 42. People are posting a lot about the end, but they're not spoiling it, which is very generous. Now, Thompson was as surprised as you are by that ending. His and Hers follows a TV reporter named Anna Andrews, played by Thompson, who returns to her small Georgia hometown to report on a string of grisly homicides being investigated by her estranged husband, Detective Jack Harper, played by John Bernthal. But even after the case is seemingly closed, a time jump late in the series finale reveals that Anna's mother, Alice, played by Crystal Fox, was the murderer all along. Alice uncovers a series of tapes her daughter made as an aspiring teenage journalist, one of which contains footage of Anna being gang raped as a group of taunting girls looks on. Horrified and devastated, she takes revenge by killing Anna's now-grown schoolmates. Now, by design, Alice is the last person you'd suspect. A former house cleaner for wealthy families who fakes dementia as a smokescreen for her crimes. Thompson found it really surprising and yet satisfying that the whodunit's driving force was a mother's love. The deaths of these women are heinous, but this thing that they've done to Anna is also really heinous. Thompson says, it complicates Anna's feelings about what has happened, but it also the audience's. Additionally, the series upends our notions of who we think about as a serial killer. This idea of an older black woman who has worked in these spaces and has a kind of invisibility because of it, there's something radical and juicy about that. The series ends with Anna reading her mom's confession letter, just as she herself is preparing to give birth. Although there's no sequel to Feeney's novel, the show's overwhelming success raises obvious questions about the possibility of a season number 2. Thompson teases an anthology series, with each season exploring similar themes of duality and truth through a new set of characters. We've had some light conversations about it, she says quietly. It is a very open-ended world. Now, next up, Thompson is fulfilling a lifelong dream with Adrien Brody. His and Hers arrives at a prolific time for Thompson, who was nominated for a Golden Globe for her starring role in last fall's Hedda, a subversive reimagining of Heinrich Ibsen's classic play Hedda Gabler. In March, she makes her Broadway debut opposite Adrien Brody in The Fear of 13 at the James Earl Jones Theater, the same space that, in a bit of kismet, housed a production of Hedda Gabler nearly 80 years ago. Now, it's been a dream of mine forever, going to Sardi's after shows and having this community of folks that are on stage at the same time, says Thompson, whose friends Bernthal, Ayo, Edebri, and Don Cheadle also are making Broadway bows in other plays this season. A lifelong theater animal, Thompson made her big screen debut in the 2006 horror movie When a Stranger Calls. Growing up, her parents instilled in her a sense of real agency when it came to how she dressed and expressed herself. It hurt me in some ways when I first entered the industry, because frankly, there was less room for that, Thompson says. When I look at the young stars now, there's less of this idea of this Hollywood standard of beauty. I came to Hollywood when that still permeated casting. They would tell me directly, "You're great, but we want someone who looks more like this." There are probably jobs I would have booked if I'd learned to straighten my hair. Thompson, who has Afro-Panamanian and Mexican roots, felt empowered by her 2014 breakthrough, Dear White People, which allowed her to channel all of these questions and frustrations I had about how to exist inside of this industry. The actress and producer has since carved out an eclectic career. She loves that people are still discovering the underseen 2020 romance, Sylvie's Love. and she delights in all the memes that the heady Annihilation from 2018 has spawned. The Emmy nominee, who came out as a bisexual in 2018, has also relished exploring different facets of queerness through Thor superhero Valkyrie, Rebecca Hall's Passing, and Nia DaCosta's Hedda. Perhaps most notably, DaCosta's adaptation changes the central love interest from a man to a woman. It gives Hedda a real foil, as opposed to existing in a fully male world. And then, as Nia famously said, "Oops, everyone's gay." Thompson jokes. That approach to queerness is fantastic. It exists as part of a protagonist's world, but it isn't the entirety of their identity. Going forward, Thompson is interested in doing more play adaptations, having produced Is God Is, starring Kara Young, and due this summer, the Westworld star has the words yes and no tattooed on her arms, which have become an ethos of sorts as she embarks on this next chapter. I sat down recently to adapt something myself and was a complete beginner, staring at the empty screen, Thompson said. So I'm in that period of not entirely knowing. I'm saying yes to things that might be out of my comfort zone and no to too much comfortability.
From the Lifeline, style star Tiana Taylor. Tiana Taylor is taking Paris Fashion Week by storm. The one battle after another star stepped out for the Schiaparelli Spring-Summer 2026 Haute Couture show on January 26 in a sheer black dress detailed with floral lace. Her jewels were the real star of the show, inspired by the 2025 Louvre jewelry heist. Taylor sported a diamond-encrusted crown with pearl accents designed by Schiaparelli's jewelry brand. The ornate headpiece was modeled after Empress Eugenie's pearl tiara, one of several pieces stolen from the Louvre. And who's celebrating birthdays today? Actor Catherine Ross is 86. Actor Tom Selleck is 81. Drummer Luis Perez from Los Lobos is 73. Talk show host Oprah Winfrey, 72. Actor Nicholas Turturro, 64. Actor-director Ed Burns is 58. Actor Sarah Gilbert is 51. Actor Justin Hartley, 49. Guitarist Johnny Lang, 45. Singer Adam Lambert, 44. And model actress Isabel Lucas is 41. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Thursday, January 29th, 2025. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ken Drost
and Jim Duffy.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,